The choice Ethan had never seen a hall so large in his life. The ceiling rose high above him like the sky itself, lit by floating crystals that glowed with soft golden light. Every step he took echoed loudly, as if the very stones wanted to remember. His footsteps, at the far end, a long table stretched across a raised platform. Behind it sat the alien council of Valera, their eyes glowing in colors he could not name. They were tall, their skin shimmering with faint patterns that shifted like waves on water. Each wore robes of silver and blue, the colors of authority in this world. In the center of the hall stood two women. They were unlike anyone Ethan had ever seen. Yet, in their beauty there was something undeniably human. One was tall and strong, her silver hair flowing down her back like a river under moonlight. Her eyes were sharp, her stance proud, as if she had been trained to stand before kings. This was Soraya, the elder sister. The other, Lyra, was smaller and softer in her movements. Her hair shimmered in pale gold, her eyes warm and deep like a calm ocean. She looked at Ethan not with challenge, but with something gentler, hope, maybe even trust. The council leader rose to speak, his voice deep and clear. "Human, you have been brought here for a purpose," he said. "Our people have suffered greatly. The war has left our numbers few, our cities quiet, our bloodline at risk of vanishing." He gestured to the sisters. "These two are among the last of the pure Valeran daughters. By our law, an outsider may take one as his mate, and in doing so, help bring life back to our world." Ethan felt the weight of the words pressing down on him. One sister, chosen. Now one sister left behind. He did not like how the second part of that thought felt. "You must choose," the leader continued. "And you must choose now." There was no warmth in his tone, no kindness, only command. Soraya lifted her chin, meeting Ethan's eyes with fierce confidence. Lyra looked away for a moment, then back at him, her gaze soft but steady. Both were beautiful in ways that almost didn't seem real. But there was something else, something beneath their eyes. Fear. The council members shifted in their seats, watching him closely. Ethan's mind was racing. Why did this feel wrong? Why did it feel like more than a choice between two women? He took a step forward, feeling the tension in the air. No one in the hall moved. It was as if the entire planet was holding its breath. His instincts screamed at him in the war he had learned to trust. Those instincts, they had kept him alive. And right now, they told him that whichever sister he didn't choose, something terrible would happen to her. He looked at Soraya first. Her expression said she was ready for whatever came, but her eyes, just for a heartbeat, betrayed worry. He looked at Lyra. Her face was calm, but her fingers were curled tightly together, as if holding back fear. "Tell me," Ethan said carefully, "what happens to the one I do not choose?" The council leader's face hardened. "That is not your concern. Human, you will choose, and you will honor our law." The answer made Ethan's heart tighten, not his concern. Then it meant what he feared was true. He felt the weight of every eye in the room pressing on him, the councils, the guards, the sisters. He could almost hear their thoughts, some urging him to obey, others silently begging him to see what was hidden. The air was heavy, the silence so deep he could hear his own pulse in his ears. He knew whatever he said next would decide more than just who stood at his side. It would decide who lived and who did not. Ethan's hand twitched at his side. The instinct to speak rose in his throat, but he forced it down. Not yet. If he answered now, without knowing the full truth, he might make the worst mistake of his life. "I will decide," he said slowly, "but I need a moment alone with them." Murmurs broke out among the council. Some shook their heads, others whispered to each other. The leader narrowed his eyes. "It is against tradition," he said, "but perhaps it will test your wisdom." A sharp gesture from his hand, and the guards stepped back. The sisters walked toward Ethan. their footsteps quiet against the stone. When they were close enough, Soraya's proud face softened for the first time. "Ethan," she whispered, "you do not understand. If you choose one, the other will be cast out into the outer barren." Lyra's voice trembled. "No one survives there, not for more than a day." The words hit him like a blow. So his fear had been right. This was not a ceremony. It was a death sentence, disguised as tradition. The sisters looked at him, waiting, desperate. Ethan felt the weight of the entire world pressing against his chest. He was just one man, far from home, caught in a law he had no part in making. But now, he was the only one who could save them both. He looked back toward the council table. Every face there was watching, waiting for him to choose. Waiting for him to kill one sister by saving the other. Ethan took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, he knew one thing for certain. He wasn't going to play their game. The truth about the sisters the moment the guards stepped far enough away. Ethan leaned closer to the sisters. His voice was low, careful. "Tell me everything. Now, Soraya." Eyes flicked toward the council, making sure no one was reading her lips. Her tone was steady, but there was a fire in it. The choice is not for the good of Alara. It is for the power of the council. Lyra glanced around nervously, then spoke in a whisper that was almost lost in the echoing hall. "They pretend this is about saving our people, but it's not. It's about control." Ethan's jaw tightened. Control over what? The elder sister's gaze darkened. "Us," she said, "and our bloodline." Lyra's eyes met Ethan's, and in them he saw fear, mixed with urgency. "Our mother was the last to carry the twin bond. It is a rare gift. A connection between sisters that makes both stronger, healthier, and fertile," she whispered, the last word trembling on her tongue. "If one of us dies, the bond breaks, and the other loses that gift." Ethan understood instantly. If the council truly cared about repopulating their world, they would never separate them. But if they did, it meant the law was a lie. Soraya leaned closer, her voice a low growl. "If you choose only me, they will send Lyra to the outer barren. She won't last the night. And if you choose only her, they will do the same to me." Lyra's voice trembled. "They've done this before. Sisters forced to compete, one always dies. The people think it's honor, but it's murder." Ethan's hands clenched at his sides. Everything inside him told him this was wrong. The war had taught him that leaders often dressed cruelty in the clothes of tradition, and here it was happening again. "Why you?" he asked. "Why not others?" Soraya's answer was immediate. "Because of the bond. Because together we could bring back our people faster than any pair in history. That makes us dangerous to their power." Lyra nodded. If the people knew the truth, they would not obey the council's law anymore. Ethan exhaled slowly. He had walked into this thinking he would have to make a personal choice. But now, it was bigger than him. It was about 2 lives, and the future of an entire world. The council leader's voice suddenly echoed across the chamber. "Human, your time is over." Guards began to step forward again, their weapons glowing faintly in the dim light. Soraya gave Ethan one last fierce look. "You cannot save one without saving both. Remember that?" Lyra's voice was softer, but it carried something deeper. "Please, Ethan, don't let them win." He felt a heat rising in his chest, not just anger, but a sharp, clear resolve. The council thought they had trapped him in their cruel game. But they had underestimated the one thing they didn't understand about humans. Sometimes, the only winning move was to refuse to play. As the guards reached them, Ethan stepped back, his face unreadable. The sisters returned to their place in the center of the hall. Every member of the council stared at him with expectation. The leader spoke again, his tone like a blade. "Choose human." The silence that followed was like a wall pressing in on all sides. Ethan took one slow breath and another, then With a voice that carried to every corner of the chamber, he said, "I choose both." The reaction was instant. Gasps, shouts. The scrape of chairs as council members rose in fury. The leader's eyes blazed. "You mock our law." Ethan's voice was calm, but the steel in it was unmistakable. "Your law mocks your people." The room erupted into chaos. Some guards moved toward him, but the leader raised a hand to stop them. His voice was low and dangerous. "Then you will prove yourself worthy of both, or lose them both forever." Ethan's eyes narrowed. "What do you mean?" The leader smiled, but there was no warmth. "In it, you will face the trial of the Ashen Wastes. 3 days, no help, no escape. Bring back the seed stone and the sisters will live. Fail, and all 3 of you will die." Ethan glanced at Soraya and Lyra. Neither looked afraid. They looked ready, and in that moment, he knew exactly what he had to do. Breaking the law, the chamber still shook with the echo of Ethan's words. "I choose both." The sentence seemed to hang in the air like a living thing, wrapping itself around every mind in the room. The council members looked at one another in disbelief, their glowing eyes flashing with outrage. No outsider had ever dared to speak such words. Not in the history of Valara. Soraya stood tall beside her sister, her chin lifted proudly. Lyra's hands were trembling, but there was a glimmer of hope in her gaze. They both knew what Ethan had just done. He had not only defied the council, he had shattered their sacred tradition in front of the entire court. The leader of the council rose slowly, his robe whispering against the floor as he moved. "Human," he said, his voice a sharp blade cutting the silence. "You think your defiance is strength? You think you can spit on our laws and walk away?" Ethan met his gaze, unflinching. "I think your law kills what it should protect." A low murmur swept through the crowd of guards and attendants. Some looked shocked. Others seemed as if they wanted to agree, but dared not speak. The leaders' eyes narrowed. "If you want both, you must earn both. There will be no gifts here, no mercy." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Name it." The leader stepped forward. Raising a hand, from the side of the chamber, a massive stone door slid open, revealing a map carved into the wall. "This is the Ashen Wastes," the leader said, his tone dripping with challenge. "A land of storms and beasts, of poison rivers and endless sand. You will enter with the sisters and return with the seed stone, the heart of Valara's rebirth." Lyra's eyes widened at the mention of the seed stone. Soraya muttered under her breath. "They're sending us to die," the leader continued. Ignoring her, "You have 3 days. Fail, and your bones will join the countless others lost there." Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady. "Then I'll bring it back." The leader's smile was thin and dangerous. "We shall see." 2 guards approached, holding a ceremonial blade each. It was tradition for those entering the trial to mark their skin with a cut. Swearing the oath of survival before the council, the guards handed the blades to Ethan and the sisters. Ethan took his and pressed the edge against his palm. Feeling the sting as the skin broke, a drop of blood hit the stone floor. Soraya followed, her cut deep and sure. Lyra's hand shook, but she completed the mark. The leader's voice rang out. "The trial begins at first light." The guards moved in to escort them away, but Ethan turned to face the council one last time. "I don't care about your approval," he said, his voice low but carrying to every corner. "I care about keeping them both alive." The leader did not respond, but his cold smile told Ethan he would do everything in his power to see that promise fail. As they were led down a long corridor toward the holding chambers, Soraya leaned closer to Ethan, her voice a fierce whisper. "Do you have any idea what waits for us out there?" Ethan smirked faintly. "I've seen worse." Lyra's soft voice broke in. "It's not just the land. The Shadow faction hunts anyone who enters the wastes. They don't want the seed stone to be found. If we meet them, they won't take prisoners. Ethan glanced at her. Then we'll make sure they regret it. The sisters exchanged a quick look, a mixture of doubt and trust before the guards pushed them onward. They were brought to a circular stone room with no windows, only a single door of reinforced metal. Inside were simple sleeping mats, a table with a clay jug of water, and nothing else. The trial would begin at dawn, and until then, they were prisoners. Ethan sat against the wall, his eyes never leaving the door. He knew the council would be watching, listening, waiting for any sign of fear, but all he felt was a burning determination. The sisters sat together across from him, speaking softly in their own language. Every so often, Soraya's gaze flicked to him, measuring him, testing him. Lyra's eyes lingered longer, as if she was searching for something deeper. Finally, Soraya spoke aloud. "If we do this, if we survive, you will not just have saved us. You will have changed Valara forever." Ethan's voice was steady. "Then we'd better make it happen." Outside, the night deepened, the low hum of the city beyond the council hall fading into silence. Somewhere in the distance, the wind of the Ashen Wastes began to howl, and Ethan knew it was calling for them. The trial, the first light of Valara's twin suns, painted the sky in gold and violet. The great gates of the council's fortress stood open, and beyond them stretched the endless, shifting horizon of the Ashen Wastes. A wind like dry ash swept into the courtyard, carrying the scent of dust and something faintly metallic. It felt like the land itself was warning them to turn back. Ethan, Soraya, and Lyra stood side by side, each wearing light armor made from woven metallic threads that shimmered faintly in the dawn. They had been given only what the trial demanded, a ration pack each, a water skin, a small blade, and the courage to use it. No map, no guide, no help. The guards watched from the walls above, while the council sat in high seats carved into black stone, their glowing eyes fixed on the three below. The leader of the council stood, his voice cold as the wind. 3 days, human. 3 days to return with the seed stone, or you all perish. Ethan glanced at the sisters. Soraya's expression was fierce and ready, her hand resting on her blade. Lyra's eyes scanned the horizon with quiet focus, her healer's senses already searching for dangers hidden in the light. With a deep, echoing clang, the gates swung wider. A guard shouted, "Begin the trial!" The three stepped forward into the wasteland. The moment the shadow of the fortress left them, the heat hit hard. The ground was pale and cracked, and the air shimmered in the distance, as if the world itself was bending. They walked for hours. Under the growing heat, the landscape shifting from dusty plains to jagged black rock. Once in a while, Soraya would point out claw marks on the ground, some fresh, some old, and her tone told Ethan they weren't from anything small. By midday, they reached a stretch of land where the rocks rose like sharp teeth. The narrow path forced them to walk in single file. Lyra moved in the middle, Ethan at the back, his eyes scanning for movement. It happened fast. A shadow moved on the rocks above, and in the next instant, a creature leaps down with a hiss. It was tall and lean, with pale scales and a mouth full of needle-like teeth. Its eyes glowed faintly, reflecting the light like glass. Soraya was the first to strike, her blade flashing in the sun. The creature dodged and slashed at her with a claw. Ethan lunged forward, tackling it to the ground, his blade sinking into its side. The thing shrieked and thrashed, but Soraya finished it with a sharp cut to the neck. Lyra was already kneeling beside Ethan. "Checking for wounds, you're lucky," she murmured. "Its claws carry venom. Even a scratch can be deadly." Ethan nodded, rising to his feet. "Then we keep moving before more show up." They left the body behind, the hot wind already beginning to strip it to bone. By evening, the ground sloped downward into a valley of strange black sand. It clung to their boots and shifted underfoot, making every step heavy. In the distance, lightning flashed across the horizon without sound. Lyra's voice was tense. A sandstorm's coming. They quickened their pace, but the storm was faster. By the time they reached the remains of a half-buried structure, the wall of black sand was almost on them. They forced their way inside through a broken arch. The air thick with dust and the smell of ancient stone inside. It was dark, except for the faint light from the entrance. The place looked like an old temple, its walls carved with spirals and strange symbols. In the center stood a cracked pedestal. Empty now, Soraya ran her hand over the carvings. This is Velaran work. Old. Very old. Ethan looked at the walls more closely among the carvings. He saw something that froze him in place. A human figure standing between two Velaran women. The three were holding a glowing stone together. Before he could speak, the storm hit. The wind roared through the cracks in the walls. The sound like 100 voices screaming. Black sand poured in through the holes. Swirling around them like smoke, they huddled in the corner, covering their faces until the storm passed. Hours later, when the wind died, they stepped outside to a transformed world. The landscape had shifted. Dunes now where there had been rock, but in the distance, faint against the horizon. Ethan saw a jagged mountain glowing faintly at its peak. Soraya followed his gaze. That's where the seed stone is kept. Lyra nodded, and it's at least a day's journey. If nothing stops us, Ethan looked back toward the fortress far behind them. He could almost feel the council's eyes still watching, whatever happened next. He knew they had to reach that mountain, or none of them would see another sunrise. Asterisk enemies. In the dark the night, in the Ashen Wastes, was nothing like the day. The heat faded. But the cold came like a predator, sinking its claws into their skin. The wind no longer roared. It whispered, carrying sounds that didn't belong to the land. Footsteps that stopped when they stopped. Shadows that moved when the stars did not. Ethan, Soraya, and Lyra had made camp in the ruins of a half-collapsed watchtower. A small fire burned low between them, its light too faint to travel far. They couldn't risk drawing attention, but Ethan knew it was already too late. He had felt eyes on them for hours. Not the eyes of beasts, but of hunters. Soraya felt it too. Her hand never left the hilt of her blade. Lyra's ears twitched slightly, picking up sounds beyond human hearing. "They're close," she whispered, her voice tight. "Closer than you think." A faint crunch of sand came from the dark. Ethan's eyes narrowed. Then a voice drifted through the night, low and mocking. "Well, well." The council's chosen ones, figures emerged from the shadows, 6 of them. They wore dark armor pieced together from scavenged metal and bone. Their faces were covered by masks shaped like snarling beasts. The leader stepped forward, a tall figure with a jagged blade and eyes that glowed faintly red through his mask. "The Shadow Faction," Soraya muttered under her breath, her tone full of hate. The leader tilted his head. "The council sends you to fetch the seed stone, and you walk right into our hands. Do you know how long we've waited for this?" Ethan rose slowly to his feet, putting himself between the sisters and the intruders. "I don't care about your politics," he said evenly. "We're just passing through." The leader laughed, a harsh, broken sound. "There is no passing. Through the wastes, human, you carry the last of Alara's bloodline. That means you belong to us now." The others began to spread out. Surrounding the watchtower ruins, Soraya drew her blade in one smooth motion. Lyra's hands glowed faintly with healing light. Though her magic was meant to save, not to fight, Ethan's voice dropped to a growl. "You're not taking them." The first attack came from the side. Shadow Warrior leaping onto the crumbling wall. Ethan met him head-on, slamming his shoulder into the attacker and sending them both into the sand. Soraya's blade clashed with 2 more, her movements fast and sharp. Each strike aimed to kill. Lyra stayed near the fire. ducking behind broken stone, pulling Ethan's arm once to heal a shallow cut before he charged back in. The fight was quick but brutal. The shadows fought like jackals, darting in and out, slashing, retreating. One landed a blow on Soraya's arm, drawing blood. Another grabbed Lyra by the wrist, dragging her into the dark, but Ethan was faster. Tearing the attacker away and driving his blade deep, the leader stayed back until the last moment. Watching, when only he remained standing, he stepped forward, blade raised. "You fight well for a human," he said, "but you'll bleed all the same." Ethan tightened his grip on his weapon. The leader lunged, his strikes heavy and relentless. Ethan parried, the force rattling his arms. Then Soraya moved in from the side, her blade slicing through the leader's leg. He stumbled, and Ethan's blade came down, ending the fight in one clean motion. Silence fell. The only sound was their breathing and the faint hiss of the dying fire. Lyra knelt beside Soraya, sealing the wound in her arm with a faint glow. Ethan glanced at the bodies around them, his voice low. "They weren't here for the seed stone, they were here for you." Soraya nodded grimly. "The Shadow faction believes whoever controls the last of our bloodline controls Valara's future." Lyra's gaze turned toward the distant mountain peak glowing faintly under the twin moons. "They'll come again," she said quietly, "and next time they won't attack in the open." Ethan tightened the straps on his pack, his voice hard. "Then we move now, before they can follow." And so, under the pale light of the moons, they left the ruins behind. The cold bit at their skin, the wind carried whispers, and in the distance, the mountain waited a silent promise and a silent threat. The seed stone climb to the mountain was worse than Ethan expected. The slope was steep, the air thin, and every step felt heavier than the last. Sharp winds tore at their clothes, armed carrying fine grains of ash that stung their eyes. But the faint glow at the peak pulled them onward like a beacon. Soraya moved ahead, her blade drawn, scanning for movement among the jagged rocks. Lyra walked just behind Ethan, her hand brushing the rough stone to keep her balance. Neither complained, but their silence spoke louder than words. They were all saving their strength for what waited at the top. By midday, they reached a narrow ledge where the path ended in a massive stone gate. The surface of the gate was carved with ancient Valoran symbols. Some were familiar to the sisters, but others were so old even they could not read them. In the center was a shallow depression shaped like two interlocking circles. Lyra stepped closer, her voice soft. "This is the mark of the twin bond." Ethan looked between the sisters. "It means both of you." Soraya nodded. "The gate will not open unless we both touch it." They stepped forward together, placing their palms on the circles. For a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then light spread from their hands like water pouring into cracks. The carvings glowed, the stone shuddered, and slowly the gate split open. A rush of warm air poured out, carrying the scent of earth and something sweet. Inside, the chamber glowed with golden light from the object resting on a raised altar. The seed stone. It was larger than Ethan's head, shaped like a teardrop, and it pulsed faintly as if alive. Lyra's breath caught. "It's real." Soraya stepped forward, but Ethan raised a hand, stopping her. "Wait," he said. Scanning the floor, the stones near the altar were cracked in strange patterns, almost like claw marks. His instincts screamed that something wasn't right. Before he could speak, a deep growl rumbled through the chamber. From the shadows behind the altar, a massive creature emerged. Its skin was black and slick, its eyes like burning coals. 6 long limbs moved with unnatural speed, claws clicking against the stone. Lyra's voice was a whisper of dread. "A guardian." The beast lunged, forcing Ethan and Soraya to dive aside. Lyra fell back toward the gate, her hands glowing as she prepared to heal. Soraya slashed at the creature, her blade cutting deep into its side, but it barely slowed. Ethan grabbed a broken spear from the wall, driving it into one of the beast's limbs. The creature screamed, thrashing, sending shards of stone flying. "Go for the head," Soraya shouted. Ethan waited for the right moment, then leaped forward, driving the spear upward into the creature's neck. It shuddered, let out a final roar, and collapsed beside the altar. The chamber was silent again, except for their ragged breathing. Lyra hurried forward, placing a glowing hand on Ethan's shoulder where the beast's claw had cut through his armor. Soraya approached the seed stone, but this time she didn't touch it. Instead, she looked at Ethan, her voice steady. "If we take this, the council will have no choice but to let us live. But they will also control it." Lyra's eyes flicked between them. "Without it, Valara will die. With it, the council will rule forever." Ethan stepped forward. Staring at the glowing stone and the carvings on the wall, he noticed something. A human figure holding the seed stone between two Valaran sisters. The three were standing together, not one ruling over the others, but as equals. He understood then the prophecy wasn't about the council. It was about them. He placed his hands on the seed stone, feeling the warmth spread into his skin. Soraya and Lyra stepped beside him, each placing a hand on it too. The glow brightened until the whole chamber shone like a sun. When the light faded, the seed stone was smaller, split into 3 pieces, one for each of them. Ethan smiled faintly. "Now no one can control it without all of us." The sisters exchanged a look, one of respect, gratitude, and something deeper, outside. The wind had changed, somewhere far below. The council would be waiting, but now? The power of Valara's rebirth was no longer in their hands. Anew. Beginning, the return to the fortress was not quiet. The Ashen Wastes seemed to watch them as they crossed its shifting sands. The sky above was gray with distant storms, but Ethan felt no fear now. The 3 fragments of the seed stone pulsed faintly at their sides. Warm against their skin, Soraya walked with her head high, her wounds healed, but her pride sharper than ever. Lyra's steps were light despite the long journey, her eyes holding a calm strength Ethan hadn't seen before. They were no longer 2 women sent to fight for survival. They were the future of Valara, and they knew it. When the great gates opened, the courtyard filled with guards, nobles, and curious onlookers. The council sat in their high seats, their faces unreadable as Ethan and the sisters walked forward. The leader rose, his voice carrying across the silent hall. "You return with the seed stone." Ethan stopped at the base of the platform, meeting his gaze without bowing. "We return with more than that," he said. Soraya stepped forward, holding up her fragment. Lyra followed, lifting hers. Ethan revealed the third. The glow from all 3 filled the hall, casting long shadows across the stone. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The leader's voice tightened. "You split it." Ethan's tone was calm but unyielding. "No one controls it now, not without all 3 of us." The hall erupted in voices, some shouting in outrage, others in awe. The council leader's face darkened. "You dare break the ancient order." Soraya's voice cut through the noise like steel. "The ancient order is why our people are dying." Lyra stepped forward too, her gentle voice carrying surprising weight. "Valara's future will not be built on the death of its daughters." The crowd began to shift, voices turning from anger to agreement. Some of the council members exchanged uneasy looks. For the first time, the leader seemed unsure. Ethan took a step closer, his voice steady and final. "Your law tried to make me choose one. I chose both. And together, we survived what you thought would kill us. That means your law is broken, and it's time for something new." The silence that followed was heavy. Then, from the back of the hall, a voice shouted, "Let them lead." Others took up the cry, the sound growing until it filled the chamber. The leader looked at them all, at the crowd that no longer feared him. At last, he sank back into his seat, saying nothing. The decision had been made, not by him, but by Valara itself, that night, under the light of the twin moons. Ethan stood with Soraya and Lyra on the balcony overlooking the city. The air was cool, carrying the scent of distant rain below. The people celebrated, their voices echoing in the streets. Soraya rested a hand on his shoulder. "You didn't just save us, you saved our people." Lyra's smile was soft, "And you gave us both a place in that future." Ethan looked out at the horizon, the fragments of the seed stone glowing faintly in their hands. "This isn't the end," he said quietly. "It's the start of something bigger." The sisters stood beside him, not as rivals, not as prizes, but as equals. And together, they faced the dawn of Valara's new beginning.